Hello, is anyone still there? Welcome to the Pins and Needles podcast. It has been almost a year since the last time I did a proper episode. It was April back in 2022, if I remember. I think I did the Wonderwool daily vlogs. And I did Vlogmas, but other than that, no proper episodes for ages. So my apologies for being away so long. That was not the plan, but life has a way of happening. So, given that it's been absolutely ages, I thought maybe I should start with an introduction. My name is Zoe. You can find me on Ravelry and on Instagram as Pins and Needles UK. I live on Barry Island in Wales with my husband Dave, my 3 kids, Conrad, Jocelyn and Max, and my 2 Labradors who are slumbering. One over there, Jim the dog, and one over there, Susie Sue. So if there's farting, snorting or barking, they are coming from the Labradors and not from me. I am a knitter, I am a spinner, I'm a very occasional sewist as well. And this is my own little corner of YouTube, and you are very, very welcome. You can find everything I talk about down below in the show notes. I tend not to do direct links because it just takes blooming ages. But I do make a list of everything I show you, everything I talk about, and if I miss anything, you are very welcome to leave me a comment and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I run a gym in Cardiff with my husband, so I'm a personal trainer. I also have a couple of woolly businesses with my best friend and work wife, Jennie, who is Owl About Yarn. And together we run the Knit Tea Retreat, UK-based in-person and online knitting retreats. Again, I'll leave links for everything down below. And we also own and run Cartref yarn, which is our very own 100% Welsh wool business. So the yarn is grown, sourced, scoured, spun, all in Wales, and then we dye it ourselves. I'm on Barry Island in South Wales, Jennie is in Cardiff, and we post our yarn out all over the world. And we will be at Wonderwool again towards the end of April. Okay, now I've been away for an awfully long time and there is not a chance that I will be able to catch you up on all of my crafting since the last time we spoke. So instead I've just chosen a few bits and pieces to show you. I'm going to try and keep this nice and short, and then hopefully I will continue to podcast on at least a monthly basis. And over time, I'll catch you up with any bits and pieces that I have come across in the meantime. I did actually want to start with spinning, and any returning viewers might have spotted that there is a new member of Team Pins just over my right hand shoulder here. And I am now the proud owner of a shacked matchless spinning wheel. I've had an Ashford traditional spinning wheel for a good couple of years. I bought her from a Ravelry friend in a car park at a yarn show. And my traddy is about as old as me, so that's 43 years. And also like me, she was starting to get a little creaky. She was starting to have a definite clunk every time I treadled. And I was looking to just upgrade. Something a little bit smarter, something with a larger bobbin capacity. And one day I was browsing, of all places, Facebook Marketplace. And this is, Shacked is an American spinning company. So their wheels are often a little hard to find over here. If you buy them abroad and import them, obviously it's very expensive. They are very expensive wheels in the first place. So my Shack Matchless, I spotted it on Facebook Marketplace, and it turns out the lady that was selling it lives in Leicester, which is only about 30 miles further west into Wales than me. And as well as the wheel itself, she was selling it with an awful lot of extra bits and bobs that I'll show you for the princely sum of £700. Now, she is a 20-year-old wheel, but she's absolutely gorgeous, and it was a complete bargain. So I messaged her through Facebook and I said, is the wheel still available? Thinking it probably wouldn't be because it would just be snapped up. And it was. So I went from seeing the wheel online to getting it in the boot of my car in about 4 hours flat. And I have to say, I'm absolutely thrilled with it. It is a single treadle wheel. They come in singles and in doubles. Mine is a single. It looks as though it's a double treadle because the treadle plate you can fit both your feet on, but it's only one actual treadle. It has Scotch tension and it has double drive. You can swap it in or out depending on what you want. And I absolutely love it. I really love it. It did take me quite a bit of getting used to, but I got there in the end. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to spin on. One thing it did take me a while to get the hang of is because the treadle is quite wide and it's quite thick wood, it has a lot of weight to it. So with my traddy, if I wanted to stop treadling, I could stop at any point in the motion of the treadle up and down. With this one, I have to stop with the treadle at the bottom. If I don't, and if I stop with it higher up, I take my hands and feet away and it will drop and it'll snap the single out of my hand. So I had to get the hang of that. It was a little bit rattly. The bobbin was a little bit rattly in the flyer, so I don't know if you can quite see it. I cut some small fleece discs basically and poked a hole in the middle, and they just sit between the end of the bobbin and the flyer and the end of the bobbin and the whirl at the other end, and that takes a lot of the noise out of it. A good dust, a good oil, and she was good to go. So I really got to grips with her during Tour de Fleece, which is run over the summer at the same time as the Tour de France. So I was watching the cycling with Dave and spinning along in my wheel. I've spun quite a lot of yarn on her. As I said, I'm not going to be showing it all of you today, but she is an absolute beauty. And I did also bring over the box of bits that I got with her as well. And I think you'll be able to see why it was such a bargain. Look at all the extras that I got. So I've got 2 jumbo flyers. One of the reasons I wanted another wheel was I wanted to be able to get 100 grams of fibre onto a bobbin, and I didn't want to have to buy a woolly winder and all the extra bits for the traddy when it was a bit clunky. This came with 2. She bought one, put an orifice reducer in it, and then couldn't get it out. So she left it in there and bought a second jumbo flyer without an orifice. I mean, goodness, these are expensive bits of kit, and she just bought 2 because one got stuck. It came with 3 jumbo bobbins. It came with, every time you buy a jumbo flyer, it comes with an extra orifice attachment. So I've got 2 of these. I've got several bobbins, high speed, medium speed, low speed. I've got a spare knob, and I've got so many extra whirls, and very handily she wrote on them. So this one is extra slow. So this would be for quite thick yarn, art yarn, that kind of thing. Can't see me using it, but it's nice to have. All the way down to teeny tiny lace flyers as well. So, oh, and some 3D printed standard size bobbins. Maybe these are Acreworks, maybe they're just 3D printed from someone she knew from the internet, I don't know. Spare drive band, Allen key, I mean, it was such a bargain. I couldn't not. So, also the lady had 2 beautiful greyhounds and a house. She was like the Miss Havisham of the spinning world, a beautiful Victorian cottage in Llanelli, 1/4 of an inch thick in dust and dog hair, and about 6 wheels in her front room, including a great wheel. And apparently she tried to sell her matchless before, but nobody had taken her up on it. A few people had come to look, but they really wanted a double treadle. And she was at the point of taking it off the marketplace listing. So I feel very lucky to have had her. So what have I been spinning on her? I have a spinning finished object to show you. Let me get these right. I treated myself to the Yarn and Yarns Fibre Advent Calendar. And I didn't manage to spin any of it in December, because December was a bit of an endless cycle of being unwell, either me or my immediate family members. So I actually started this between Christmas and New Year. I'm missing day 16. I don't know what I did with the little mini from day 16, but I really enjoyed every single fibre. They were a mixture of bats, comb top and rolags, which I'd never spun before. I decided the easiest way to show you was to thread them onto a knitting needle. And they're just such a lovely range of colours, different range of fibre preparations. I've tried to spin them all broadly to a 4-ply, and the rolags did come out thicker. Let's just have a look. This one here, this is the first rolag I ever spun, so it's quite uneven, but as ever when you ply it up it looks much better, and I think it's come out to a sort of a sport or a DK. Here's another rolag in the middle, and again you can see it's much thicker than the others. Really enjoyed spinning these, and some really nice fibre blends as well. There's some Polworth, there's some Merino, there's some BFL. This one here was a Hill Radnor rolag. Now Hill Radnor is a classic Welsh breed of sheep, and they're really pretty, sort of a almost gingery and cream patches. Hill breed obviously because it's Wales. This one here, it's a little bit sparkly if you can see. This one had some hemp or linen in it, which I'd never spun before. So it's a mix of merino, I think, and some Angelina and some hemp. And once I'd got the hang of the very different staple lengths of the linen as opposed to the merino, I really enjoyed spinning it. So I'd like to try and find some fibre that has a reasonable linen content in it, so I could spin something up to make myself a summer top. This yellow one is one of my favourites. It's got silk neps in it. I've put them on the knitting needle in the order, so you can see I had sort of quite a few days of muted colours, and then I open this one and pow, yellow with silk. Absolutely beautiful. So it was a really good way to try some different fibres, try some different fibre preps, and I enjoyed every single minute of spinning and plying these up. I spun them sort of 4 days at a time, end to end on my matchless, and then I took them off the bobbin. I wound a centre pull ball with each of the individual minis, 2-plied them on themselves on my electric eel wheel e-spinner, and then I soaked and washed them all at the end. So I know quite a few people that I'm friends with on Instagram did either Angela's yarn advent or her fibre advent, but yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. Really good job on that, Ange, well done. In terms of what I'm spinning at the moment, I did a friend's advent swap that we've done every year for the past, I think, 3 or 4 years, and I've got quite a lot of yarn minis, scraps, leftovers, swaps. Didn't really want any more, so some of the little parcels I received from my friends had some fibre in, and Ruth sent me, that's a pretty accurate colour, I think about 50 grams of mystery fibre. It's from Fellview Fibres, which I'm sure a lot of UK based people have heard of, and there must be silk or possibly bamboo in the most gorgeous copper tones. And I needed something to keep my hands busy while I was on the Knit Tea Society Patreon live Zoom the other Sunday. And I sit at my sewing table in the back room for that, so it's easier for me to spin on my electric spinning wheel. This is my electric eel wheel 6 from Dreaming Robots. I bought it as part of the Kickstarter. I mostly ply on it, if I'm honest, because then I don't need to change the setup on my matchless to the jumbo anythings, because I know I can get 100 grams applied yarn on these big bobbins anyway. So I tend to do 2 bobbins of 50 grams on there and then ply it up onto my electric eel wheel. And that is how it's spinning up. Is that focusing? I hope that's focusing. I'm spinning pretty fine because I want to practice my chain plying. I usually do a 2-ply, but I wanted to get a bit more practice in with a chain ply, so I'm not aiming for any particular weight, it's just as the fibre wants to be. So I suspect I'll end up with a sport weight, depends how much it poofs up when it hits the water, but that's what I'm spinning at the moment, and I'm hoping if I do all my jobs today I can sit down later and do a little bit more. We shall see. On to knitting. I have a finished object to share, sort of. Long-term viewers will remember that I've been knitting a scrappy blanket for many years. I started in 2016 and it's still not finished. Okay, so what I'm doing is knitting mitered squares into bigger squares, and eventually I will join all of them together to make a blanket. So I mentioned the Friends Advent Calendar swap, and the minis I put in this set of 6 squares are from that Advent swap from 2021. This blanket I've sort of reverse engineered. There's a pattern called A Stitch in Time, I think, by KF Jones of the Bakery Bears podcast. And when she started designing that pattern and showing her progress on her podcast, I really loved it. So before she published the pattern, I sort of worked out my own way of doing it. But she does now have a fully paid for pattern, which I will put down below. And I think from chatting to a friend of mine who was following Kay's pattern, I do mine a little differently. So what I do is I knit 2 separate mitered squares. I cast on 31 stitches and I use a 2.5mm needle. So I cast on 2 separate squares and I finish them all off, and then I pick up along one edge and up another edge of the other square, and then I knit a third, and then I'll cast on 15, pick up 15, create a 31st stitch in the middle on the return row. These ones I can pick up from both. This one I pick up 15, cast on 15, create an extra stitch, so and so all the way around. So I don't know the names of the yarns involved in this one. This is a bit of hand spun from Ruth. Thank you very much, Ruth. And then I do a sort of a log cabin edge, if you can see that, with some undyed owl about yarn sparkle owl. And I tend to do them in blocks of 6. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. These don't match exactly because I ran out of a couple of the yarns. So I ran out of this green, so I replaced it with that one, and I ran out of that blue, so I replaced it with a hand spun. So they're not identical, but they're quite similar. And I did think I might be close enough to the finished size, but I'm not. I laid them all out on my king size bed and I took a picture, so I'll pop that in here. And as you can see, I've got to knit a few more just to finish off that bottom row, but I think I need at least 2 or 3 more sets of 6 to be able to get the size that I want. When I've completed all of the squares I need, I'll then work out the arrangements. I just plonk them on the bed in any old order just to get an idea of the size. So I'll mix up the lighter and the darker ones. Not sure how I'll join them together yet. Maybe a sort of a crochet, maybe a whip stitch, I'm not sure. And then when they're all joined, I'm going to do an I-cord border. I did bring down a couple of the other sets. This was a set of minis I bought specifically for this project from Jo Knit Sew, who's a vendor we're often at the same shows with. She's tons of fun. And this set, which might actually be one of my favourites, is from a bunch of minis from Sarah's Texture Crafts, who unfortunately no longer dies, which is a real shame because her yarns are absolutely beautiful. So, you know, there's quite a variety in the squares. So it's going to be a very bright and cheerful and mixed blanket. I was considering actually making them into a cardigan instead because of the dogs, because it will get snagged and things, but it'll probably still be a blanket. One of my works in progress, I'll only show you one today, is kept in my fabulous sheep bag by, of course, Emma of Eldon Woodcraft. And this is, I think, the biggest project bag I've got. So this is my jumper size project bag. And in here, I have a cardigan that has been giving me so much grief. It's definitely me and not the pattern. But I am knitting a pattern by Baby Cocktails called Mastiha. It's a reasonably new release, and it popped up on my Hot Right Now list on Ravelry, and I think I went from seeing it for the first time to casting it on in about 3 days flat. I was like, I want that, and I happen to have the perfect yarn. The yarn is a lovely navy Aran weight. I think it's Bluefaced Leicester. And I bought 8 skeins of this from Skipton. Jennie and I went up to Yarndale many years ago. And this is Laxtons yarn. And subsequently, they have now started selling to the public via their website. At the time, you could only buy directly from them at the odd show that they went to. And this was just their bargain bucket. So it didn't come with a label. There was a label on the outside of the bucket, I think, which is why I'm not 100% sure it's Bluefaced Leicester. Super soft, gorgeous colour. It was always going to be a cardigan. And I'm playing a little bit of yarn chicken. I've got 50 metres more than the pattern says I need for my size. So I haven't added any length to the body because according to the schematic in the pattern, it will be long enough for me. I wouldn't have minded an extra couple of inches, but I can cope. Anyway, this is how far I have got. So it's knit all in one piece up to the arm, so each row is very long indeed. I've marked out my pattern repeats, and I've marked out where the side becomes the back on both sides with these beautiful little stitch markers. Lovely beads and really fine wire to go over the cable. They were a gift from a podcast viewer, so thank you very much. You know who you are. I've been loving using them. So let me see if I can hold it up a little so you can see the stitch pattern. There we go. So it's twisted stitches rather than cabling with some pearl bumps to add a little bit of variety. You can see I've put what do you call them? A lifeline in. So you knit to a certain length, that's where I put the lifeline in. And now I'm starting to decrease. It's a V-necked cardigan. It's hard to show you this on such a grey, miserable Welsh day. So you can see I've got a line of sort of rib running up here. You decrease inside that first repeat. So the V-neck starts before the armhole shaping. So at the moment I'm just doing V-neck decreases, and then eventually I do V-neck and armhole decreases. And it's at that point where I introduce the second set of concurrent decreases that I've made a pig's ear of this 7 times. 7 times. It's entirely my fault because every time I read the pattern, it's clear as day, I just make a pig's ear of it. There are 2 rows in the pattern repeat where you do shift the markers, and I'm pretty sure that at least half of the errors were from me forgetting to do that. But I think I've cracked it now. And I said it's Aran weight yarn, so it actually goes pretty quickly. So even if you do have to rip back, it's not too much of a drama. So I'm slogging away on this. I really want the finished object. I think it's going to be great, and it's really nice to be using some deep stash yarn. This is the ball of yarn I'm currently working with, and when I get to almost the end of this, I will have re-knitted all the yarn I previously pulled out, and it's always nice when you get to that point. Yeah, so that's it. Mastiha by Baby Cocktails. It's a lot simpler than it looks from the pattern, as I said, just because it's twisted stitches. It's not cables. It can be a little bit hard to work on in the evenings because it's navy. And did I mention it's grey in Wales? But I stole a spare bedside light and put it behind me on the radiator cover so that I have got a bit of extra light heading my way. Last but by no means least, I've got just 2 things to show you in terms of acquisitions. Obviously there's been more since the last time we spoke, but it's, you know, as I said, it's kind of too much to go over. One of my personal training clients spends a lot of time in West Wales, and there's a mill in West Wales called Melyn Tragwynt. Again, I'll link it down below, but that's how you spell Melyn Tragwynt. And they have a small set of weaving looms, and they produce beautiful blankets. And you can buy scraps. The blankets are beautiful, but quite expensive. They're sort of several £100s, and much as I'd love one, I don't have several £100s for a blanket. But the last time Judith was there, she bought me a bag of scraps. Look at this. Just all different colours and patterns. I do like this one. This would be, that side would be beautiful in my living room. Look, you see, green and a lovely peachy pink. 2 small squares of blue. Which side do you like best? It's hard to pick. A lovely minty green and brown. A really fun blue and white. And 2 big squares of that red and orange with the beigey bits in. So I need to decide what to do. Like, do I make a patchwork bag, even though my sewing isn't very good? Do I use the smaller bits to make a needlebook cover? I don't know. What would you do with such beautiful wool scraps? I was umming and ahhing about a hot water bottle cover, but my lovely mum made me one for Christmas. She knit me a lovely sort of lilac-y one with an I-cord pull at the top. So I don't need another water bottle cozies, but I do have this lovely fabric. So if you have any suggestions, please do let me know. I don't think I want to do like a handbag that I'd use outside the house because it rains so much and I wouldn't want it to get wet and pulled by the weight of whatever I was carrying. So I do need suggestions for that. And the other thing I wanted to share, another client of mine went away on a family holiday to Iceland, and it was the second time she'd been. The first time she bought herself a beautiful sleeveless yoked cardigan that she unfortunately shrank even though she hand washed it. And so she mentioned it to me and I said, oh, well, I might be able to do something with it. Bring it in and I'll have a go at reblocking it. And I managed to pin it out back to its original measurements and she was absolutely thrilled. Then they went back again. Oh, well, it would have been last year now. I don't know, autumn time. And it was her 50th birthday when she was out there. So she ordered herself a second one. You can choose, they have sort of samples in the shop and you can choose the colours you want from their yarn display and they'll take your measurements and knit it up. And as a thank you for restoring her first jumper, she asked the owner if, you know, for a yarn recommendation for me. And she was tempted by the Let Lopey yarn. And the shop assistant said, well, yes, that's classic yarn, but you can get that anywhere and the tourists often buy that. And she said, what the tourists don't know about is this. So this is Gilagi wool mill, Ulavinslan. My apologies for murdering what I'm sure is a beautiful language. So she got me 2 skeins of silver grey and one of this, it's sort of very dark chocolate grey colour. So it's a worsted weight, it's 2 ply and it recommends 4.5 to 5.5 mil needles, 200 meters for 100 grams. So yeah, heavy DK, light worsted. And although it looks, you know, a little kempy, if you can see the fibres coming off the edge of it, it's really quite soft. I'm fairly bulletproof when it comes to yarn, but for me this would be next to skin soft. So I'm wondering if I've got enough to do colourwork mitts and a cowl. But I've been saving it to show you before I work it up, so maybe I will get knitting in the summer when you don't want a lap full of wool. But yes, really, really kind of my client to buy me some lovely yarn, and nice to know that it's quite special. It's not something that they certainly don't export this. They keep it for themselves on the island apparently. So now I've got some. It says pure Icelandic virgin wool from the Arctic North in Iceland, spun at the family farm Gilagi. So there we go. That's all the things I've got to show you. I hope we'll be able to keep this to about half an hour. In terms of life update, there's been quite a bit because it's been a year. So we're just going to gloss over that. We've had some lovely times, we've had some hard times, there's been good news and bad news, but ultimately everyone is doing great. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of footage of the dogs on the beach from this morning. I know a lot of you are very keen to keep up to date with Jim the dog, and obviously Susie is now, how old's Susie? She's 14 months now, so she's grown an awful lot since the last time any of you will have seen her. So we went down to Jackson's Bay this morning when it was beautiful and sunny, chased a few tennis balls, had a paddle in the sea, and generally had a lovely walk. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for sticking around and waiting for me to pull my finger out and get back to podcasting. If you enjoyed watching, please give me a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and I will absolutely see you again very soon. Maybe the end of February, possibly early March, we'll see, but I will be back. I am back. All right, look after yourselves, happy knitting, and I'll see you soon.